When Jacob got down on one knee, I thought my world was finally aligning perfectly. For years of late-night talks, shared dreams, and quiet moments had led to this, a promise of forever. His eyes were full of hope, his voice trembling with emotion. I wanted to say yes so badly. But little did I know, that moment would also mark the beginning of a silent war. Almost immediately after our engagement became public, Margaret appeared. My future mother-in-law. She wasn't the warm, welcoming woman I had imagined. Instead, there was a sharpness to her smile, a coolness in her gaze that cut deeper than words. At family dinners, I'd hear her whispered comments, "Nina's nice enough for someone who's just a corporate employee. I hope she understands what it means to marry into this family. You can't expect to run with the wolves if you've only ever known the sheep." Her voice was sweet, but the intent was venomous. I tried to ignore it. I told myself Jacob loved me, and that was enough. But Margaret was planting seeds of doubt not just in me, but in her son's mind. I caught Jacob looking uncertain sometimes, conflicted. One rainy evening, the confrontation came like a punch. Jacob sat me down, voice low. "Nina, Mom wants us to sign a prenup." I blinked, heart hammering. Why? We trust each other. Why would she demand that? He hesitated. She's worried. She thinks it's necessary to protect the family's assets. She says it's just a precaution. I wanted to scream. To tell him this was a trap. But instead, I swallowed my pride. Because love makes you do that, make excuses, ignore warning signs, and sometimes, sign your own chains. I signed the papers with trembling hands, while Margaret's eyes gleamed in the background, a silent victory. The days leading to the wedding were a whirlwind of flowers, dresses, and tension. Margaret took control like a general commanding her troops. Every detail had to be perfect. She insisted on using her family jeweler for my necklace, dismissed my choices for the floral arrangements, and subtly reminded me who was in charge. "Tradition is important, Nina," she'd say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Some things shouldn't change just because the times do." I bit my tongue, but inside, I burned. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that my family was far from ordinary. I had deliberately kept my background quiet. My father, Alexander Monroe, was a titan in the business world, a founder of multiple international corporations, including Monroe Industries. The very company where Margaret's husband Edward had spent 25 years climbing the ladder. Unaware, he never really met the founder himself. I wanted to be loved for who I was, not my name. The wedding day arrived, shining with all the expected grandeur. Then came the moment that shifted everything, the arrival of my father. He stepped out of a sleek black Rolls-Royce, radiating power and calm in his tailored suit. Cameras flashed, guests whispered. Margaret's face lost all color. Her carefully constructed control crumbled. She whispered sharply to Edward, "Who is that man? Why is he here?" Edward could barely answer. I took my father's arm, feeling his quiet strength beside me. Jacob looked at me, stunned. "You never told me your dad was Alexander Monroe?" I smiled softly, feeling a surge of vindication. "I wanted you to love me, not my last name." Margaret laughed, a hollow, brittle sound. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The game had changed. But the fight was only beginning. The atmosphere was electric, the kind of charged silence that filled a room when a secret is about to be unveiled. The day I had dreamed of was unfolding, but it felt like walking through a minefield. As my father gracefully stepped out of the sleek black Rolls-Royce, the murmurs rippled through the crowd like wildfire. The guests whispered, trying to make sense of the unexpected arrival. Margaret's carefully polished mask began to crack. I could see her eyes flicker with shock, a rare vulnerability crossing her face. "Who is that man?" she asked Edward, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with sharp disbelief. Edward, usually so composed, seemed momentarily stunned. That's Alexander Monroe, he stammered. The founder of Monroe Industries. Margaret's forced smile faltered. I could almost hear the gears turning in her mind, trying to recalibrate a world that suddenly looked very different. As I walked beside my father, holding his arm, I felt a surge of pride and power. Jacob looked at me with wide eyes. Confusion and awe mixing in his expression. "You never told me your dad was the Alexander Monroe," he said quietly, almost afraid to believe it. I gave a small, confident smile. "I wanted you to love me, Jacob. Not my name or my money. Just me." The room seemed to hold its breath. Margaret's laughter was brittle, almost manic. "Oh, Nina, why didn't you tell us? We would never have insisted on a prenup if we'd known who you really were." But the truth was simple: she had pushed for that contract because she thought I was beneath them. Because she wanted to keep me out. Now, everything had changed. The honeymoon felt like a dream, but reality soon stormed back in like a thunderclap. 2 weeks after we returned, my phone buzzed late at night. It was Jacob, voice tense and low. "Mom's lawyer just sent over papers. She wants to cancel the prenup. Says it was signed under false pretenses that you hid your background." I sat up, heart pounding with a mix of anger and disbelief. She wanted the prenup, Jacob. It was her idea. Now she's furious because she thought she could keep me in my place. Now that she knows the truth, she wants to rewrite history. His voice cracked. "She's telling people all kinds of lies about you. About us. She says you deceived her family." I clenched my jaw. Let her. Lies don't last when the truth is on your side. Days later, a formal letter arrived from Margaret's lawyer, polite but insistent, demanding a re-evaluation of the prenup. I didn't hesitate. I sent back a firm response: request denied. Margaret wasn't just fighting for money, she was fighting to regain control over a narrative she lost the moment my father stepped into that wedding. And I wasn't about to let her win. A week later, Margaret extended an invitation to Jacob and me for dinner at their house. I debated accepting. Part of me wanted to see her face when I refused, but another part craved the closure only confrontation could bring. When we arrived, their home was immaculate, but the air felt cold, heavy with unspoken grudges. Margaret greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You look radiant tonight, Nina. Truly glowing." I matched her polite tone with a sharp edge. "Thank you. Must be the satisfaction of honoring legal agreements." Edward hovered nearby, avoiding eye contact like a man trying to disappear into the wallpaper. Dinner was a tense affair. Margaret's small talk was a thin veil for the real conversation she was desperate to have. After the main course, she set down her fork and turned to me. "Nina, I want to be honest. I realize now I may have acted prematurely. If I'd known your true background, I never would have insisted on that prenup." Her voice was smooth but heavy with an accusation. I leaned forward, locking eyes with her. "So it wasn't about protecting your son. It was about protecting your assets." Margaret's smile faltered. She continued, "I think we should consider annulling the prenup. It no longer reflects the realities now that we understand your financial standing." I sat back, my voice calm but unwavering. "The prenup exists because you believed I wasn't worthy. You pushed it because you thought I was a gold digger. It doesn't vanish just because you want access to my assets now." Jacob shifted uncomfortably beside me, and Edward avoided my gaze altogether. Margaret's facade cracked, but her pride held firm. "Think carefully, Nina. This could be your chance for peace." I smiled coldly. "Peace requires respect, Margaret. Something you never gave me." A month later, we attended the prestigious Monroe Industries annual charity gala, held in the Grand Monroe Tower, the crown jewel of my father's empire. Jacob and I arrived arm in arm, aware of the silent whispers swirling through the crowd. Margaret and Edward were present too, their forced smiles masking simmering resentment. When my turn came to speak, I stepped confidently onto the stage. Clearing my throat, I addressed the crowd. Good evening. I'm Nina Monroe, co-director of the Monroe Foundation and daughter of Alexander Monroe. Tonight, I stand before you not just as Jacob's wife, but as a woman who has earned her place through perseverance and strength. The room hushed, eyes fixed on me. I glanced at Margaret, whose expression was a mixture of shock and reluctant respect. Later that evening, she approached me quietly. Nina. I was wrong about you, she admitted. I held her gaze steadily. Yes, Margaret. You were. She swallowed hard. Is it too late to fix things between us? I shook my head slowly. The contract you insisted on remains intact. But our relationship? That chapter closed the day you underestimated me. She nodded, a trace of humility in her eyes. As she walked away, I felt a surge of triumph not just for the victory in business or family, but for reclaiming my identity on my own terms. It's been nearly a year since the wedding day when my secret was unveiled. Since then, the prenup has become an unspoken battleground. Margaret never brings it up anymore, but I can see it in her eyes, her simmering frustration, the way she measures every word around me. She's tried subtle tactics. Friendly invitations that never materialize into anything real. Thinly veiled comments about family loyalty, even vague rumors floated through their circle to question my character. But I stand firm. I am not a pawn in their game. Jacob and I have grown stronger, not just as a couple but as partners in every sense. We've launched new initiatives at the Monroe Foundation, making a real impact in communities. My father has been my steady rock, a reminder that power and respect aren't given, they are earned. One afternoon, I received a text from Margaret. Can we talk? For the family. I stared at the message. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But I'm not a quitter. I replied, when and where? We met at a quiet cafe, away from the opulence and eyes of the corporate world. Margaret arrived wearing a softer expression, less armor than usual. She seemed almost human. I want to try, she began, voice cautious. I want us to find common ground. I studied her carefully. Was this an olive branch, or a trap? I want respect, I said plainly. Not just from you, but from everyone who thought I was less than your son's wife. She nodded slowly. I underestimated you. I let my fears dictate my actions. Her words surprised me, but old wounds don't heal overnight. I won't erase the past, Margaret. But if we're moving forward, it has to be on honest terms. She reached out, hesitating, then withdrew her hand. Agreed. No more secrets. No more games. As we parted, I felt the weight of years pressing down, but also a spark of something new. Maybe respect could grow, even from the harshest beginnings. But one thing was clear, the prenup wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a symbol of boundaries I was ready to defend, no matter what.